Welcome to Destination Business Freedom, hosted by Pat Mancuso. Join us as we explore success strategies and hacks from leading entrepreneurs, helping you bridge the gap between financial success and personal freedom. Your journey starts here.
Hi, my name is Pat Mancuso, and I'm the host of the podcast Destination Business Freedom, where we interview entrepreneurs, business owners who have either exited their business or are on the way to exiting. My goal as the host of the podcast is to help business owners no matter where they are in the journey, but specifically to help them to see that destination and then understand how they're going to get there, whether that exit is 2, 3, 5, 10, 15 years from now, or whether it's a partial exit, whether it's an ESOP. It doesn't really matter. What's important is they actually define that address. And that's what my goal is to accomplish, is that you as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, take away an action item or two from every one of our podcast guests and our thought leadership episodes to move closer to that destination address. So I'm excited that you're here today and honored that you're taking the time to listen to our show. Chad, welcome to our show today.
Hey, thanks so much, Pat. Great to be here with you. This is another thought leadership episode. We've done a few of these together, and I'm looking forward to today's episode. I know it was important as we record this one. We're kind of in mid-September. We're kind of headed quickly towards fall, the fall season. Kind of tell me why it's important to you to talk about what we're going to talk about today, given the time of the year.
Well, Chad, I want to do that in just a second, though. I want to make sure that our listeners know that this episode today is brought to you by the Mancuso Consulting Group, which uses and has a proprietary process we call the Mancuso method to help entrepreneurs and business owners who are dedicated to closing that gap between their finances and their freedom. We created this with over 40 years of experience working with thousands and thousands of business owners. One of the offers that we have is that if you are interested in taking a very short survey, a 10-question survey, we're going to help you to identify an action plan based upon priorities of where you are in your journey to close that gap between their finances and their freedom. And the beauty of this is that when you take that survey, not only are you going to get a prioritized list, but you'll also get invited to a 30-minute call with me, where on that call, we will guarantee to deliver to you $10,000 more of value in that 30 to 45 minutes together. Otherwise, I'll personally write you a check for $500 on the spot. That's how firmly we believe we can impact business owners, no matter what industry, no matter what size and where they are. So if you're interested, go to www.themancuso.com. So, Chad, let's get started. I'm excited about talking about where we are in this time of the year. And you and I chatted a little bit before we started, and I gave you this analogy, if you may, and I want to give full credit that this came from Gary Keller in the book called The One Thing. And in The One Thing, he talks about, what's the one thing such that by doing it, everything else becomes easier and necessary. And in the book, he also talks about priorities, and he identifies a metaphor, if you may, of glass balls and rubber balls. And, if you think about it, Chad, a rubber ball is something that if we drop, no matter from what height, it'll bounce back up to some level. A glass ball doesn't do that. And so in business, the analogy, if you may, is that we can't drop those glass balls. And yet right now we're coming into a time of the year where, in about a month and a half or so, we'll have Thanksgiving, we go into the holidays, and then all of a sudden, boom, 2025 is here. And yet as I talk to business owners each and every day, what I'm finding right now is they're struggling in a number of areas where they wanted to be in 24 and where they actually are. So that's the conversation I want to have today for our folks that are listening.
Okay, sounds good. So let's get into it then. Give me a little bit more details on the glass ball, rubber ball analogy.
Yeah, so let's think about it this way. So the story today that I'm going to use is an actual client that we've been working with for a handful of years. And they're doing amazing things. Let's be very clear. They're doing amazing things, not certainly because of me as their coach and consultant, but we're having an impact on them, certainly. However, what we started to see is a trail off in certain parts and certain pieces of the metrics that we were measuring. And as we started talking, it became abundantly obvious as to why that was happening. So I'll give you a couple of reasons to look at in your business that these things could be happening, and you may be so busy, you may have leveraged this responsibility to somebody else, you may not have the clear metrics. And so without a number of those things, this could be happening right now and you're not even aware of it. So let's think about first in what's the most important thing to any business, and that's sales. At the end of the day, it's been said a number of times that sales fixes pretty much everything. I mean, obviously you want to run an efficient operation. Obviously you want to watch your expenses. You want to hire the right people, all those type of things. But most every problem you can solve with increased or more sales. Well, if the sales aren't happening to the level that they should be, obviously that's going to impact everything else. And so what a lot of companies do when their sales are off is the first thing they do is not look at the right place. They look at expenses and they go, okay, our sales are down. The market is down. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. The market is down. And one of the things that I was taught in real estate very early, both as an agent, and I thank Gary Keller for this, and as a broker owner and as an owner of franchises, et cetera, is that the market may be down and it may be off 20, 30, 40%. But that doesn't mean your business has to be down. It just means the market is down. Now, you have two choices. You can be the market or you can be different than the market. In other words, you can do things differently. So when we start looking at those metrics, we got to be really clear as to what's not happening in terms of our sales. And in this particular case, the conversation that I'm sharing with you is this client was not looking at the very simple things that should have been happening in that business that weren't happening in that business in terms of sales. Now, the individual who is responsible or the individuals who are responsible are very talented people, Chad, and this didn't have to do with their talent level. Now, we did understand that as we shored up their processes, that talent level may or may not be exposed. In other words, as we put more accountability in the processes, we added more systems to the process, that talent level might have been exposed to the point that maybe they weren't the right person. But myself and the business owner, we felt pretty confident they were the right person. And what we discovered, which goes back to what we do with companies, is they had hired the right person and they had done some training in the beginning, but they really didn't do the extent of training that needs to be done in order to make sure that things are being followed the way that they're supposed to be followed. I may have mentioned this in a prior podcast. I'll talk about it again. It's called the kite string analogy. You know, when you were a kid, Chad, you probably flew a kite as I did. And, you know, you had the kite and you had the string and you go out into the street or the park or wherever you went and you let a little bit of kite string out and you start running and in hopes that the kite is going to take off. You don't let out, 5,000 yards of string and then start running because that kite is never going to get off the ground. Well, hiring a new individual and then putting them in a new role and then training them is the same analogy. And you can't let all that kite string out in the beginning. In fact, you can't let them go on their own until you know they're following your models, not their models, your models. And your models are predicated on how you've built out your lead generation, your lead follow-up, your conversion, all the things that you would want to do as an organization to really ensure that it's replicatable, duplicatable. And that wasn't happening. We discovered that that wasn't happening. And it didn't make the individual right or wrong, bad or good. It just meant the process wasn't in place as we needed to be for that company to hit those numbers. So what happened is that was a glass ball. And as I started pointing it out to the business owner and we started digging further and further, we found that there were other glass balls being dropped. And unfortunately, that wasn't the first place they looked at the problem, if that makes sense.
So what are some things that you guys did to shore that up, to turn it from a glass ball to a rubber ball?
So well, and here's the thing. It's I love that you put that in that place. It won't ever turn into a glass ball, Chad. That's the thing. It's always going to be a glass ball because that part of the process will never, ever be one that will always hit the ground and bounce up. But what you're really saying and what you're really asking is, how do you ensure that you don't drop the glass ball? That's
Okay.
really the conversation. And so what we did is we went back to the beginning. We went back to how should this individual have been trained in the beginning and looked at how they were trained. And what we discovered was, for example, the preparation for the call. They were doing preparation entrepreneurially, which many people do. It doesn't mean it's not successful, but they were doing preparation entrepreneurially. They were organizing their sales call, if you may, their presentation entrepreneurially. Their follow-up was entrepreneurially. And what we discovered was, you add all those entrepreneurial things, and sometimes you'll have success, which was the case, but in many cases, they weren't having the success that they could have otherwise had with a more precise, a more result-oriented process. So in sales, I'm not going to share anything with you that's probably new to you, but it may be new to some of the folks that are listening.
Mm-hmm.
In order to be successful at sales, and there's many ways to do it, I'm just going to give you the way that I've been taught and the way that I've succeeded and the way that I've helped companies build out their success is that if you're selling business to business or business to consumer, but let's really focus on business to business first. In order to sell somebody something, well, wait a minute, you can't sell somebody something. Let's be clear. That's the first mindset challenge you have to have. You can't sell anybody anything. What you have to do is you have to create the conversation for them in their head that if they don't take action on this particular product or service or offering, that they're going to be impacted and continue to experience the results that they're having until you can create that conversation. We call it in our world a gap. I have to create a gap to fill a gap. I have to create a gap where you see the need is so strong based upon where you're at right now that the product, service, or offering that I can offer you is what you see as your savior, as the way that you get out of the pain that you're in, that you're experiencing. Because until I do that, or until someone does that, their mindset won't change on why they're experiencing what they're experiencing. So I'll give you a great example. If I'm in sales and I'm not hitting my sales goal, that means I'm not making the type of income that I need to. Now, maybe I lose my job in a short order, but many times I don't lose my job because right now some people, some entrepreneurs, some business owners would rather keep somebody who's a 5 in a role than finding somebody who's a 9 to a 10, right? Because you're never going to make, in most cases, a 5, a 9, or a 10. You can make a 7.5, an 8, a 9, or a 10 because they're already starting with a solid foundation. But the point is that I have to be able to create a gap in the person on the other side of the table's mindset that they need what we have. I can't sell them. I have to get them to think, oh, you know what? That's exactly what I'm looking for. And then the decision becomes, so first, does the product, service, or offering I have meet them where they are? But then the conversation in their head with your help is now, is this what's going to help me to get to where I want to get to? Or is it still too uncomfortable for me to make the change? So let me give you this example. So when you go to the doctor does two things, Chad. He or she does a diagnosis, okay? Because you're coming in, I was just in for a checkup here. Just went in for a checkup. Check my vitals, check all my blood, check everything you need to check, doc, and make sure that there's nothing that I'm missing or something is going on that I don't know. Well, that's preventative. But then I go to the doc and I go, doc, I'm not feeling well, man. I've got this pain in my side for a month. Well, in both cases, they still have to diagnose what the issue is, create the gap. And then what do, Chad? They prescribe a prescription or a remedy. Now, I know I have the gap. I have the health issue. They're going to prescribe what they feel is best. Now I still have a choice. Am I willing to do what they're asking me to do? Am I willing to take? And that's the piece where you have to be really good at creating the gap. And that was the glass ball that was dropped, is there wasn't a gap being created. So it was a great conversation that, the individual was having with their prospect, but it wasn't turning into what it needed to turn into. And why that's so important is not everybody buys today, right? Not everybody buys today. They're not ready, maybe. Maybe they're in a contract with something that they can't get out of for 3 months. But here's what I know. In that presentation, they're going to make a decision today to either continue the conversation or not. You only get one shot at that conversation continuing. So even though I might not sell them, so to speak, I might not convert them, they might not buy today. What I've got to make sure is, let's say they walked into that conversation with me in sales and they were a 2 at the start of the day. Didn't know a lot about my product, didn't know they had any issues, didn't know anything. If they were 2 today and I don't move them from a 2, I'm not getting a second opportunity, another appearance at the plate. I'm not getting it. But if I help them in their business, I help them to start thinking differently outside of what service or product I'm offering, and I move that needle from a 2 to a 5 or a 2 to a 6, guess what? I probably have an opportunity to follow up with them. So that glass ball was dropped. And it wasn't just dropped in sales, what we discovered. It was dropped in the servicing of their existing clients. And here was what was really amazing. So they have a software product, if you may. And what we discovered in that software product is there was a gap in their conversations they were having with existing clients. There was a time window where we could measure when was the last time that we had contact with that client, and when we were losing clients, what was the time frame, when was the last time we talked to them. And we discovered a metrics there by doing some more analysis, in that there was a window when we would start to see them fall off, and we could identify that window, which meant now we could take action on how to actually proactively have a conversation with them before that window, therefore reducing our turnover, our fallout, which means then we don't have to add as many people to backfill in what we lost.
So how do you kind of start that conversation? I think most people like me, if there's one thing I don't want to have happen on any day, is to have or to be sold something.
Yes.
Maybe I think I'm similar to most people. So how do you get that conversation where I'm even receptive to what you have to say?
Sure. So I can tell you, but it might even be easier if we kind of role play. I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
Sure.
But do you have anything in your world, your life right now, a problem that you wish you could solve that's impacting you in your business, your life, anything? It doesn't really matter. It's the same conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I can't afford to get the car that I want, so I'm driving around in a car that I'm afraid is going to die on me anytime.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we'll do a little bit of a role play, and and by the way, your answers are going to be very typical. So the first thing I say to somebody is I might say, well, Chad, you know what? How important is purchasing a new car to you on a scale of 1 to 10? 10, super important. 1, not important at all.
If I was in a position to do it, it would be a 9.
Well, let's just say you are in a position to do it. Would it still be a 9?
Probably.
Well, see, the point to asking that question is you started with, if I was in a position to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You just identified you weren't in a position to do it. But what I'm trying to understand is, how important is it to you? See, if it's not important to you, if it's not a 9 or a 10 for you to achieve that goal, well, then no matter what I say or what I do or what questions I ask you, it's not important enough for you in your world. And so that's the first thing, is that, so in this case, I might use an analogy with real estate agents. I would coach real estate agents for years and years on their income levels. And you have to understand, when people are not succeeding at the level they want to, because everybody wants to succeed. Very few people don't want to not succeed. I mean, they want to succeed. When you ask people why they're not succeeding, generally they're going to give you some excuses like, well, it's the market, and interest rates are high. I'm using real estate as an analogy. Interest rates are high. Nobody answers the phone. Nobody likes realtors. Nobody wants to pay a commission. Da 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 da. Okay, is that the reason you're not making income, or is that the reasons that exist in the marketplace that people may not buy or sell with you? Well, of course, it's the reasons in the marketplace. But the fact of the matter is if I want to make more money, if that is my number one priority, and I'm in real estate, I'm going to have to do things differently than I'm doing right now to do that. But if the pain of not making enough money isn't painful enough, then I'm not gonna do what I need to do. Now, by the way, that's okay, but for some it may not be okay. And let me give you the difference.
Hmm.
When I started in real estate years and years ago, there wasn't 1,000,005 real estate agents when I came into real estate in 1990. But over the years, that number has gone up and up and up, and the real estate number of transactions really hasn't gone up to be consistent with that. So the bottom line is this: a smaller percentage of real estate agents sell more real estate because they're running it as a business. Now, when I got into real estate, there were people who just wanted to sell real estate because they didn't have anything else to do on the weekend. That's awesome, by the way. But if they had money and they just wanted something else to do on the weekend, that's one thing. If they didn't have any money and they didn't have anything else to do on the weekend, that's a whole different story, right? So there's got to be motivation there for what somebody wants, and I got to understand what that motivation is. That's number one. Number two, and I would say, well, Chad, what's holding you back from making more money? And you're going to give me some answers. Now, most of those answers that you're going to give me can be changed. But in most people's mind, the answer that's holding them back, they see can't be changed. Or they're not willing to make the commitment to change. So I'll give you kind of just a numbers game. Let's say when the market was really good, I could make 10 calls and get one deal. And the market changes, and now the numbers are I got to make 100 calls to get one deal. You see the dynamic there is very different, but the end result is still the same. I get a deal if I do a certain amount of calls. The challenge for many people is they don't want to do 100 calls to get one deal when they were doing 10 calls to get one deal. And until they accept the fact that the market changed and they have to be more responsive to the market, they're not going to do different business. So that's how you start these conversations. And sometimes, particularly when you're talking with an individual, but even if they're an entrepreneur business owner, you have to understand there is something that's driving them to do what they do every day. And until I understand what that drive is and what's being impacted by not succeeding, then I probably don't have an impact on creating a gap for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. You mentioned earlier that the person that you were kind of working with was approaching sales more entrepreneurially than
Right.
following the processes. I'm guessing a new salesman, especially one who's experienced, but it gets hired with a new company, probably thinks, like, I can sell ice cubes to Eskimos. Like I've got my style. I'm confident.
Yeah.
What is often the gap between what the processes that a company might have and maybe a confident, good salesman might have?
Sure. Well, you actually kind of laid the groundwork for it. So if I'm working for a company and I'm selling cars, and I'm the top salesman in cars, one would think I could go over and be the top salesman in real estate. Now, that may or may not be true, but what is absolutely true is that there may be some differences between how you would attract clients in a car dealership versus how you would attract real estate clients. Now, some people might think it's different, and most car dealers, okay, they wait for people to come in the door. Where the highly successful sales dealers, car salespeople, they're lead generating. So remember, there's two ways and I say lead generate. There's proactive and there's reactive. Reactive is I'm at the car dealership and the car dealer's got a big billboard on the front of the building and people walk in because they see it because they want to buy a Ford. Well, proactive is I'm establishing a database of clients to talk to, friends and family and networking and doing all the things that I need to do to establish a database. The most valuable piece of real estate, so to speak, in any business is their database, their client list, because that client list never goes out of style, ever goes out of style. Now, they might not buy a house for 7 years, but they might know somebody who's going to buy a house in 7 years. They might buy a Ford 1 year, but they might buy a Chevy the next year. Well, if I know somebody who sells Chevys, I'm going to establish a relationship because that client in my database may not buy a Ford again this year. They might buy a Chevy. So the point is that the difference in the lead generation is who is your customer? What is your product? There's fundamentals that are all the same, but just because I was successful one place doesn't mean I'm successful in another place doing either entrepreneurially or even following the system that I followed in the other company. It doesn't mean you're not going to take some great things away. But the fact of the matter is when it's something is systematized, Ryan Dice talks about this, and he's got a book that is an amazing book if folks haven't read it. And I've had Ryan on my podcast previously, and he's written a book called Scalable, and he also owns a company called Digital Marketing. And in Ryan, in Scalable, he absolutely nails this piece of it, where when it's a system, it can be replicated and duplicated. And for the most part, if you have some parameters of the right individual, they can just go replicate that system. Entrepreneurially is that it's about the individual. Systems, it's about the system. And you plug the individual into the system, and now there's not a lot that can go wrong there if you're plugging the right individual in the system. It always starts with the right person. Like, people issues are the number one issues people or companies have. But if I have the right person and I have a proven system, I mean, I'm in heaven. I'm absolutely in heaven.
Yeah, very nice. Very nice. Hey, as we kind of wrap things up here, Pat, is there anything else we should know about kind of the glass ball, rubber ball concepts, or the recruit select process, anything like that?
Yeah. So I'm glad that you asked, Chad. So this time of the year, we don't just do business consulting. We work with companies on their top line, their bottom line. And, we're taping this right now towards the middle part of September. And, business returns are due September 15th. And then personal returns on extensions will be due in October 15th. So people are looking at what their outlays are for any type of shortages in taxes that they might have. And then B, they're starting to look at their 2024 and looking at their tax implications and what does that look like. Here's what I would offer, okay? First of all, not offering tax advice. I am not a CPA. I'm not an attorney. So this is just simply for educational purposes based upon my personal experiences and based upon the businesses that we work with. Many times people are making decisions in their businesses right now without enough information, without a foresight looking forward into their business. And the easiest, best example I can give you is, and this is no disrespect to a CPA. So if there's CPAs listening, I am not disrespecting you. I'm just giving you facts. A client I knew told me a story. He said, Pat, I was getting towards the end of the year in my business a couple of years ago, and I went to my CPA and they told me, they said, well, here's what your tax implication is going to be based upon where you're at for the year. So you should go out and buy a bunch of equipment so we can depreciate it. Now, I'm not saying that isn't a great strategy, and I'm not even saying it wasn't a great strategy for that business. But here's what I am saying. Remember creating the gap? That individual who gave that advice had no idea what that business owner's sales were 3-6 months out from now. They really didn't understand what their cash flow position was relative to what that next 3 to 6 months looked like. And ultimately, they went out and they bought this equipment. They utilized a bunch of cash. And now in the first quarter of the year, they were out of cash. And I'm talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so my point is that you have to understand, as a consultant, I'm not just looking at their business today. I'm looking at their business 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months out to understand what is their cash flow 3 to 6 months from now, based upon where they are today and where they're going and what needs they're going to have next year. And unfortunately, if there was one piece of advice I could give to every business owner that's listening, we call it the 3-statement model. There's 3 statements in your business, and they're all important for different reasons. First one, obviously, is your P&L. And your P&L is important on a weekly, daily, monthly basis. And most people look at their P&Ls 10 to 15 days after the month ended. Too late to be reactionary to it. What's already happened has happened. P&Ls can be printed out on a daily basis. They can be printed out on a weekly basis. And so understand where your business is at, not just 30 days from now as the P&L is done with and closed out. Understand where it is today. So measure those metrics. Second statement is the balance sheet. Where is the balance sheet in terms of a cash position, in terms of equity, in terms of debt? And then thirdly, and I really believe the most important statement for business owners is the cash flow statement. Where are we sitting right now? What is our projected outlay based upon our expenses in the next 6 to 12 months? What's our projected income coming in the next 6 to 12 months? And where is that going to put our cash position? Because that can be identified through the right processes in the financials and the right accountant and the right business owner who understands. And sometimes business owners, Chad, run from financials because they think they don't understand it. They don't want to be embarrassed because they don't understand it. But the fact of the matter is I've said this for years in my business career and to the clients we have spoken with over the years is you don't go bankrupt suddenly, you go bankrupt gradually. Everything happens gradually and then it happens suddenly. Yeah, we look at all I mean, just look in the last week or 2 weeks. Big Lots filed bankruptcy. Red Lobster filed bankruptcy. These are highly recognized names with brand recognition. They owe hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, I don't know all the details, but here's what I know. They didn't stop making money in the last month to meet their expenses. This has been a trajectory that unfortunately somebody didn't fix earlier on. And some of these businesses are just going to go by the wayside because they're so bad off that nobody's willing to buy them for what the debt is. And therefore they're gone. And think about one of the companies I just read employs 20,000 people. Where are those people going to get jobs in the market that we're in?
Yeah.
I sound a little passionate about this. And, everything happens gradually. It doesn't happen suddenly. It happens gradually. And unfortunately, when it comes to small business owners and medium-sized business owners, when it does happen, and when they're at the point to the extent that suddenly now happens, sometimes they're not able to recover because they just don't have enough resources.
So when would be the ideal time to realize that you are headed down in that direction?
Today.
Okay.
I mean, I know that sounds kind of a trite answer, but the fact of the matter is, if you set a goal to sell 10 widgets today and you sell 9, are you off track?
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, but see, and I love that you said that, but here's the question. Either the 10 was the goal or it wasn't the goal. Because if it was the goal, then a little bit doesn't matter. Now, that's not to say that, we live in a perfect world. But if, let's say the goal was 10 widgets today and we sold 5, should that raise alarm bells? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that the people that are doing the sales, it doesn't mean anything, actually. It just meant that we didn't meet our target today. And what are we going to do about it tomorrow? Because if we let it go by tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day, all of a sudden now we're a week into the month. We can't fix the week that's gone by, but we sure as heck can fix the last 3 weeks of the month. And unfortunately, there's not a high enough sense of urgency on that. And particularly this gets magnified, Chad, in businesses where you have the CEO still being the operator, still out in the field selling, and they're working 10 to 12-hour days. And they're just happy to make it home at night. But the fact of the matter is that all the more important for them to have people around them who are vested in their business, but also can look at it from a unattached outcome perspective. In other words, I care about my client's business, but it's not my money. So I can give them advice. I can give them coaching and consulting. But if they don't take it, I'm not having to worry about meeting their payroll next week. They are. But I'm willing to have that conversation with them. And we had this conversation in over the years. Again, I acknowledge Gary Keller and the things that he taught me running our franchises. When you see things coming, you need to be reactive. And some of those reactive things coming, I'm not saying reactive too late. I'm saying, I remember when the market shifted in 07, 08, one of the things that Gary told us and shared with us and consulted with us is you need to go look at your expenses and you need to look at things that maybe you were doing in a market that's different. And even for example, go to your landlord and negotiate a lease adjustment based upon what you see as your future cash flow, because you're going to need cash. And the landlord wants you to still pay rent, but maybe willing to work with you. That's reactionary from a positive. It's proactive, really, is what it is. But it's proactive relative to what's going on in the market, what you see happening. And unfortunately, a lot of people aren't doing that, and they're not doing it soon enough. And in some cases, they don't know how to do it. I would add this, and again, without getting political, obviously, but taxes are likely going to go up for business owners. I don't think there's any way around what's going on in our economy, what the debt is, what are, I study a lot, I read a lot, I listen a lot, I take out the BS. I don't think there's any doubt taxes are going to go up somehow, some way, because, you got federal taxes, you got state and local taxes, you got sales tax, holy Hannah, we get taxed all over the place. But the point is they're going to go up for business owners. I don't think there's any doubt. Are you taking proactive approaches right now around that? Are you taking advantage of tax mitigation strategies, tax credit? Are you taking advantage of the things that the government incentivizes business owners to build their businesses, and they put these opportunities out there? Are you taking advantage of those? Are you preparing? And so long-winded answer to, there's a lot going on right now. People are having hard times hiring people. What are you doing to keep your people? What are you doing to keep them happy? What are you doing to invest in them? What are you doing to create long-term opportunities for them? It's not easy being an entrepreneur, Chad, or a business owner. It's the most rewarding thing in the world, but you have to play the game at a high level. And it doesn't mean you need to know everything. It just means you need to play the game at a high level and watch those glass balls, because you can't let the glass balls drop.
Yeah, absolutely. Very important stuff. Very interesting as well. Hey, Pat, it's been great to talk to you. Thank you so much. If people wanted to follow up with you about some of these things that maybe they they know that they should have been thinking about but haven't, is there a good way to do that? I know you mentioned it probably earlier.
Yeah, well, first of all, we shared this podcast because we want to have people, think about the things they may not be thinking about. So we appreciate our listeners, and you can go to mancusocg.com, which is our website. We have our podcast there. We have our Mancuso method quiz there, if you may. We have a lot of resources there. Share that information. Share the podcast. Let us know what you take away. Let us know who you'd like us to interview. We have some amazing guests. We have some amazing guests coming in the next few weeks. I would tell you we've got a gentleman who works with businesses on sales, actually exits. We have a tax mitigation individual who is amazing. So we've got some great guests that come to our show, and just keep sharing. And I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, all those places. So connect with us wherever you can, and please share the information. We love it when you do.
Okay, awesome. Hey, Pat, great to talk to you today. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, Chad, thanks so much for your time. And everybody, thanks for listening. Take care until we talk again.
Thank you for joining Destination Business Freedom with Pat Mancuso. May the insights and strategies shared guide you towards financial prosperity and personal freedom. Continue to navigate boldly. Until next time, keep transforming challenges into achievements. Farewell, and stay the course.